A new clade of bizarre prehistoric reptiles has recently been named. Called Protopycnosia, it is currently only known from 3 incomplete skulls. But what little is known is astonishing. Protopycnosians had large domes on their heads reminiscent of the famous Pachycephalosaur dinosaurs. However, the Protopycnosians lived during the Triassic period, long before the Pachycephalosaurs, and were not dinosaurs themselves, but instead more distant relations who evolved their dome heads as a result of convergent evolution. Protopycnosia is currently only known from 2 species, Triopticus primus and Craniosauria cuttei, both from the late Triassic. Triopticus primus was named in 2016, and is only known from part of a single skull, which besides the dome also preserves an endocast of its brain and part of an eye socket. Its name translates to first trioptic, in reference to a pit in the skull resembling a third eye, and how there was nothing else like it known at the time. The only fossil of Triopticus is from the Dawkins group in Texas. The second species of Protopycnosian, Craniosauria cuttei, was named and described in March 2021, though its fossils were first found in 1989 in the Indian Malayuri Formation. It is known from 2 skull domes, though it lacks a preserved endocast of its brain. Its name means Cuttey's helmet lizard, in honor of T.S. Cuttey, who found the fossils. It was only with Craniosauris' recent description, and its similarities with Triopticus, that the clade Protopycnosia was formally named to unite these odd, domed reptiles. Protopycnosia seems to be part of Archosauriformes, the clade that includes dinosaurs, crocodilians, and relatives of the 2 groups, but it does not seem to be part of the advanced group Archosaura. Given the limited fossils, beyond this it is not clear where it fits in Archosauriformes. This makes any reconstruction of the rest of the body highly speculative. Most of the Craniosauria reconstructions in this video are based on Alocotosaurs, perhaps because of the strange headgear of the Alocotosaurus stringosaurus. But while they were close relatives of the Archosauriformes, Alocotosaurs were outside of Archosauriformes proper. Likewise, while many of the Triopticus reconstructions have a long snout, this is likewise pure speculation. Examples of non-Archosaurian Archosauriforms include Proterosuchids, Erythrosuchids, Euparkerids, Proterochampsians, as well as a number of similar reptiles outside of these groups. Because of the limited remains, no estimate has been given for Protopycnosian size. However, the domes were not large, and Triopticus was stated to have probably been no larger than an alligator at most, and was most likely smaller. As Craniosauris' dome was slightly larger than that of Triopticus, its body was probably a bit larger as well. Protopycnosian domes are outwardly very similar to those of Pachycephalosaur dinosaurs, as well as some Permian synapsids. However, there are differences between them. Protopycnosian domes are formed from 5 rounded protuberances, referred to as bosses, on the top of the skull, with the main dome formed from the boss in the middle. Given how the domes were roughly textured, it seems that they were covered in keratin, meaning they would have been larger in life. The bone of their domes was divided into 3 layers. The bone in the inner layer was the densest, while the bone in the outermost layer was the least dense. Pachycephalosaurs also had 3 layers of bones in their domes, though the order of density between them is different. The actual purpose of Protopycnosian domes is not entirely clear. In general, such features are usually the result of sexual selection, either for visual display or use for combat between competing males. Examination of the bone pathology of Pachycephalosaur skulls has found what appears to be scars from such contests, heavily suggesting they did indeed headbutt each other. Another suggested function of domes has been for defense against predators. However, Protopycnosians may have used their domes for an additional purpose: hunting. While it's unclear what Triopticus and Craniosauria ate without fossils of their teeth, all known Archosauriforms outside of Archosauria were carnivores. Therefore, Protopycnosians may have been carnivores as well, using their domes as a weapon to stun and kill prey. Out of all of these possibilities, Craniosauris' skull offers some clues in narrowing it down. Unlike other dome species, the back of Craniosauris' dome was relatively delicate. However, the front had much denser bone, potentially allowing for combat between rivals. However, given the greater potential for damage to the delicate portions of the dome in less controlled settings, this makes the idea of them using them as weapons, either offensively or defensively, comparatively unlikely. Triopticus lacked both the dense bone on the front of the dome and the more delicate parts, suggesting it may have used its dome differently than Craniosauria did. The pit mentioned earlier was between the 5 bosses, though it was smaller in Craniosauria. The exact purpose of this pit is uncertain, but it looks vaguely like the socket for a parietal eye, sometimes called a third eye. This is a photoreceptive organ present on the heads of some animals, including many reptiles. However, parietal eyes were already lost in the first archosauriforms, and there doesn't seem to have been a way for it to connect to the brain in either species. Therefore, the primary hypothesis is that the pit was simply a byproduct formed from how the bosses grew. Regardless of whether or not Protopycnosians had a third eye, given the size of Triopticus's eye sockets, the actual eyes of Triopticus were rather large. Combined with the size of the optic nerves as determined from CT scans, it seems that Triopticus at least had very good eyesight. CT scans of Triopticus's brain case revealed that the shape of his brain was typical of most archosauriforms, though it had some similarities with the pachycephalosaurs, likely as a result of both groups needing to accommodate the shape of their domes as they evolved. Triopticus's brain also had a large falculus lobe, a section of the brain that is involved in motor functions. It also had long, semicircular canals in the inner ear, which would have aided it in holding a stable gaze. Beyond this, very little is known about the Protopycnosians. On the bright side, despite their rarity, they seem to have had a widespread distribution across Pangaea. This suggests their fossils could be found in a wide variety of locales. Hopefully, wherever they are found, they'll help us learn more about these fascinating reptiles. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something interesting. If you would like to learn more about Protopycnosia, the links to the 3 research papers on the group are in the description, though the last one is behind a paywall. Have a great day, and if you enjoyed the video, please remember to hit the like button.